Hey everybody, my name is Ken Satkunam and I am the owner and founder of NorthStar Technology Group. We are a managed service provider. We have built a platform, a framework called Protect to Propel, where Protect is building cybersecurity, compliance, risk and readiness foundations, right? To be able to allow our AI and automation and um, technology modernization stuff to just flow without, you know, full throttle, essentially, right? Protect to propel. And today, I guess last time we met, we kind of introduced this concept of just say yes governance, right? And we'll be talking about what that means. But essentially, we're going to be focusing the next 5 months on each of the five pillars that we believe is necessary in order for organizations like yours to be able to take advantage of AI and any modern technology safely, securely, and within compliance. So, um, today's pillar one, inventory. And honestly, this is the step that everyone wants to skip. But ultimately, short of a few things that we're going to be diving in regarding shadow AI, um, is one that is probably the most simple to go through, right? It just maybe, I don't know, time consuming or boring, right? But it's also the most important pillar because all of the rest of this stuff that we're going to be talking about over the next few months depends on it. So let's dive in. Before I start, I do have a confession to make. Cybersecurity, compliance, governance, right? Like all of these terminologies, these discipline, all of these we've kind of established that we have a bad reputation, right? When I say those words, what do you guys think? Right? What is it that comes to your mind? You know, for most people, of course, it's either their eyes glaze over, their shadows, their shoulders slump, right? They groan. Nobody wants to deal with this stuff. We're kind of like the broccoli, right, of modern technology. Everybody knows, you need to do this stuff, you need to deal with this stuff, but nobody really, really wants to. Um, so what does that end up meaning in practice? Well, we've become, I guess, the department that we say no to, right? I call this the department of no, right? No, don't use that tool. Nope, nope, we're not ready. No, 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 no. It's way too risky. And I get it, right? That instinct is understandable, but it's also quietly costing you. The organizations that are pulling ahead in this AI race aren't reckless. They've just built a way to say yes safely. And ultimately, that's the entire series, right? That is the entire premise of our Protect to Propel framework. But before I go into the how, I want to talk a little bit about the why. So let me ground this with some of the more recent numbers that we have. This one is just happens to be from IBM's 2025 breach report. All of this data is corroborated in multiple studies, right? I'm just picking one. Last year, 1 in 5 organizations that were breached were hit through shadow AI. 20% of all breaches last year were initiated through shadow AI, tools that their own people started to use without anyone vetting them or approving them. 63% of those organizations had no AI governance policy in place at all, not even simple, right? Most organizations by this time were decades into this, right? Most organizations at this time have some acceptable use, right? But when was the last time that was reviewed, right? Back when email and web surfing were our biggest risk. 97% of all of those AI related breaches, there were just absolutely no controls. None of that is exotic, right? It isn't sophisticated attackers. It's basic visibility that nobody honestly had. Now, here's the part that really matters and why this Say Yes series and not a scare session. The same report shows the other side of this. Those organizations that put AI to work intentionally, under control, saved nearly $2 million per data breach during that time and contain incidents almost 3 months faster. Now, that is cool when it comes to cybersecurity breaches, right? But what that report did not even talk about is all of the unlocked opportunity, time friction reduction, decision friction reduction, savings, money, dollars, real money, right? Um, but the point is that governed AI is not your expense, right? It is your edge. It is your advantage. It is your superpower. That's what the five pillars, i.e., the five sessions, right, that we're going to do one a month here now for a while. That's why these five sessions we want to build with you starting today to see what you have. Five pillars. Inventory today. See everything you have, right? Assess. Know your exposure from those items that you identify. Classify. Understand your risk profile. Govern. Build out that permission structure. And finally, operate. Govern continuously. These run in order for a purpose, and you cannot start anywhere but the first one. Let me show you with a real story. A practice manager at a healthcare facility that we work with, let's just call him Marcus. Marcus sat down with his lead physician and asked one simple question. Walk me through your day. Name every single tool that makes a recommendation or an automatic decision. The physician thought about this for a minute, figured, you know what, maybe they named six, maybe eight. How many do you think that they came up with? 20 minutes later, the whiteboard was absolutely full. 17 tools, three of them processing patient data, and one had an agreement meant to protect that data, had already expired 3 years earlier. Nobody was hiding anything necessarily, right? Nobody was careless per se. They simply could not see what they had. You'll hear me talk about this more and more, right? You can't govern what you don't know you have. Now, when they finished the full register, their true count was actually 21 applications, and they believe that they had fewer than 10. This is the pattern almost every single time. Most executives that I meet with and ask them, even just a question of how many cloud applications do you guys run in your organization? No one, and I mean no one, can ever name more than 10 off the top of their head. And the average that we find is closer to 60. And again, this is the pattern. Most organizations have 2 to 3 times more AI in their environment than their official asset list shows. Not because anyone lied to you, because AI never arrives as a project. It arrives as a feature inside tools that you have already bought and maybe even consented, right, to turning on those features. So here's the logic. You cannot assess, right, which you have in inventory. You cannot classify which you cannot see. You cannot govern what is invisible. And you cannot operate around shadow AI you don't know exists. Every pillar inherits from this one. Get this pillar wrong, and the rest is simply built on sand. Now, I can already hear the groans right through my microphone. The moment that I say register, half of you picture a spreadsheet, right, that dies on a shared folder. So let me try to reframe this. The AI tool register is not a compliance document. It is a strategic asset. It is the one thing that lets you say yes quickly and with confidence the next time someone brings in a new tool. Protection is not the brake here. It is the runway. What goes in it, I think, is fairly simple. And again, you can make yours as robust and detailed as you like, right? The point here is to start. Every AI tool, every single agent, every integration in your environment, whether or not IT blessed it or not, for each one, four things. When was it added? Who owns it? A person. And what data it touches. And finally, its risks here. And again, we'll be diving into these in later sessions. But for today, the win is honestly just building the list. As unglamorous and unsexy as that sounds, your inventory list is your single most valuable artifact that you have. Now, for every tool on that list, ask yourself three questions. First, what data does that tool process? And at what point in the workflow does it touch it? Not does it touch sensitive data? Yes or no. Where in the work does it sit? Because that will actually tell you how exposed you actually are. Second, where does that data go after the tool is done with it? Does it go to the vendor? To one of their AI subprocessors? Or into a pipeline that, I don't know, trains a model? Most executives that I work with have never asked that question, either to themselves or the vendors that they work with. And third, what model is actually running underneath? Is it proprietary, third party, cloud hosted, on premise? Three questions. If you can answer them for every single tool, you, my friends, are ahead of almost everyone in your industry. Now, the part that surfaces the real risk, shadow AI. I promise you it's in your organization, whether you know it or agree with me or not. Shadow AI are the set of tools that your IT doesn't know you have running. IT's never seen it. The ones that compliance has never reviewed. They don't show up on any asset list that you have because nobody's bought them, right, as AI. Someone just started using them. And this is where your real exposure lives. Remember that number from earlier, that 1 in 5 breaches now start right here? And you can't put it on a register until you find it. So how do you find it? Well, the easiest way, of course, is utilizing technology, right, to automate the discovery of this stuff, right? And later I'll give you a link to meet and we could talk about, how to possibly do this through technology, right? Maybe it's through accessing your firewalls, maybe it's through your content filtering. There's many, many ways to do this. But if you don't have access to any of that stuff, so what, right? One question. You don't necessarily need to audit this. You send this to every single department head in plain English. What software in your workflow makes decisions or recommendations automatically, even if it's small ones? That phrasing matters. People don't think of their tools as AI. They think of them as the thing that drafts the email or scores the lead, right? Or updates the documentation notes. Ask it this way, and most of the time, the hidden layer comes out. So let's do it right now. Take a few seconds. I'm not going to wait forever, but especially since we're on a webinar and you can't see me. I mean, you can see me, but I can't see you, right? But take a few seconds right now on whatever is in front of you. Jot down every single tool in your own workflow, right, that recommends something, drafts something, scores something, updates something, or decides something, even if it's just a little. Don't filter. Most of you have more than you probably expected. And that's just your own workflows, right? Multiply that times every single one of your departments and those staff that work in them. And that gap between what you thought you had and what you and your team just wrote is exactly what we're here to close. Let me make this concrete. If you're in healthcare, the tool you forgot to register is very likely touching protected health information today. And the agreement that was supposed to cover it, your BAA, Business Associates Agreements, may have lapsed. Exactly what it did for my friend Marcus, right? The BAA that you signed with your EHR vendor, in the 90s or the 2000s, right, is not representative, right, of what the tool is today. And to put scale on it, healthcare breaches are actually the most expensive in any industry and honestly have been for 15 years running. Most of those organizations that were breached believed they knew everything they had and were running. Now, if you're a law firm, your exposure is client attorney privilege. Client information is flowing through an AI tool, right, that nobody in your firm probably vetted. Model Rule 1.6 doesn't pause because a tool is convenient. The duty of confidentiality follows the data wherever it goes, including into a model that you might have never even evaluated. And if you're a defense contractor, right, your exposure is controlled unclassified information, CUI, sitting inside a tool you never inventoried. Under CMMC, that's not a gray area. That is a finding, right? And the assessor will find what you didn't get to first. The register, the inventory is how you find it first. And finally, if you're in financial services, the Federal Trade Commission safeguards rule expects you to know where customer information is collected, stored, and sent. An uninventoried AI tool is an open gap on the day a regulator, an auditor, or a client asks the question. Knowing beats guessing every single time. Now, just a quick warning, because I've seen this fail. A register that hasn't been opened in 60 days is not a register. It's a graveyard. The whole value is that it's current. And if shadow AI ever surprises you at an audit, understand what that means. The scan didn't fail that day. It failed months earlier, quietly, when nobody actually ran it. So, what does good actually look like? Every tool on the list with a named owner, what data it touches, a tier. Again, we'll be going into some of these risk tiers in future sessions. A shadow AI scan every quarter, preferably more frequent than that, but not once, right? On repeat. And when someone mentions a new tool on Tuesday, it's on your register by Thursday. That's it. It's not so much that it is complicated, right? But it is disciplined. Now, here's where this connects to the rest of the series. Inventory flows into assess. into classify, into govern, into operate. Inventory is the front door. Everything downstream, every risk rating, every policy that you write, every approval depends on that list being complete, accurate, current, which is exactly why we don't skip it, right? And which is exactly why it's the first thing we do. Now, I don't want to leave you with a framework per se, although this essentially is one, but I do want to leave you with at least 3 actions that you can do this week. One, pull your last 3 vendor contracts. Maybe they're with AI tools, maybe they're with line of business applications. I don't know. Search those agreements for the word artificial intelligence or subprocessor or AI. If it isn't there, that gap is your starting place. 2, send that 1 question survey, right, to every single one of your department heads. The tally that you get back is your first shadow AI inventory. Is it accurate? No, of course not. Right? But it's a start. And 3, name a AI governance owner. One person, not a committee, named and accountable. We all know the phrase, if everybody is responsible for something, I can actually hear you guys say it back to me, right? No one is. And one of the biggest mistakes that we see, right, is all of this stuff that I've been talking about. Obviously, IT, your tech, your MSP, right, can assist you with gathering this information, but none of this is the responsibility of the tech team, right? These are business and compliance and risk mitigation steps, right? Name a person as your AI governance owner. And I say that that person should not be in IT. It should be part of your leadership team. But just that one act, right, of naming someone tells your entire organization, you know what, this stuff is real and it's important and it's coming from the top down. It's becoming culture, not a binder. So that's really it. That's inventory, right? Not earth shaking, right? Yet, for some reason, it's the last thing that people do. When I talk about governance, what is the first thing that people usually start doing? They draft a policy. They're like, this is easy. Let's just write a policy. Right? We'll just create a policy and we'll send that out, right? You can't write a policy, right, on systems and data access that you don't know you have, right? Step 1, inventory. You've seen everything, right, that you have, right? And your natural next question, of course, is how exposed am I? Now that I know what I have, right? I've got a list, I've got all this information, how exposed am I? Well, guess what? That's pillar 2. The next session is assess, understanding your exposure based on what you have running in your environment. So if today is about seeing, the next one, assessing, is about measuring. Now, I'll leave you with the line that drives every single thing that we do at NorthStar. You don't protect to prevent. You protect to propel. The register and all of this stuff, all 5 pillars, is not meant and is not there to slow you down. It is there so you can finally say yes, fast and safely. Now, I'm going to open up for questions. I'm going to put my QR code here. Feel free to scan that. It leads you to my digital e-card, fancy version of a business card these days with some downloadable content. But if you are interested in doing this, you want help, right? Book some time with me, and I'd love to chat with you some more. But I'm going to open this up for questions now, if anybody has any, so I can get you guys back to work. All right, got to find my Q&A. Okay, so how long? The first question I have here is how long does it take to build the register? Yeah, obviously that's a little bit of a, well, that depends, right? And of course, everybody gets sick of that. But the first pass may take a couple days, a few days, right? I'm not talking about months. It shouldn't take months. You start with what you already know, right? And then add those survey results that you get feedback and input, right, from your department heads. A complete register, like the one that we help Marcus, practice manager and IT person, usually lands in 2 to 3 weeks, right? The work really isn't the building, right? It's keeping it current after. Now, there are ways, right, that you can automate this stuff, work with a managed service provider, an IT organization, right? We all have tools to kind of help auto inventory this stuff, right, through our RMM tools, et cetera, content filtering. But it really shouldn't take you long. And again, I always tell people, and my team gets sick of hearing it, done is better than perfect, right? Speed wins. Just get started. Next question. Is a spreadsheet good enough for our inventory? Well, you know what? Anything is better than not having an inventory in place, right? So a spreadsheet can absolutely be where you start. The format is not the issue, right? It's the discipline. A spreadsheet that's current beats a platform that nobody uses every day, right? Just don't let that spreadsheet become the 60-day graveyard. Members of our team use Copilot and Chat GPT at work. Is that shadow AI? Well, if it's sanctioned, approved, monitored, governed, and you know what data is uploaded and touched into that system, then no. Shadow AI is the unapproved, unmonitored, unknown tools, right? The point isn't which tools. The point is whether you can see them, whether you know about what they do, right? And have controls in place, right, to mitigate that risk. I wouldn't suggest using, say, a free version of ChatGPT, right, to put critical patient or customer information or confidential data to, right? Um, However, if you decided that that's going to be what you are allowing and understand the risks involved and have inventoried that on your pillar one, then it is not shadow AI. Might be dumb, but it's not shadow AI. You mentioned someone from leadership should be the person owning the register. How much time should they expect to to devote to this? Um, yeah, so it's not just owning the register, right? So the responsibility goes well beyond that. I'm talking about naming an AI governance owner across all five pillars. We've only talked about one today. All five pillars, right? Um, so how much time does it spend? Well, again, depends on the complexity of your environment. So, how many tools are we talking about? How many employees are we talking about? How often does your technology change, right? Do you tool hop, right? Um, so it's hard for me to necessarily give a time estimate, right? But this is a very, very serious and important position. You probably, if you are in certain compliance regulated industries, I don't know, like healthcare, right? You probably have a named compliance officer for HIPAA. Does that person in your organization share multiple responsibilities, or is that their only thing? So, um, gauge it for what it's worth, but it is a really, really, really important role, and certainly something that we can help you with, right? We offer this completely as a service, fractionally, right? So one of the things that we implement with our AI customers is, one, we help them build out um, automations and AI improvements and enhancements, right? But more importantly, we anchor that with our advisory service, where we essentially become that party that helps you govern that. Um, these are good questions. We're a small team at our firm. Does this really apply to us? Um, yes. Smaller teams often have way more ungoverned AI per person, not less, right? Because you have fewer gatekeepers, much, much, much faster adoption, right? And the good news is that the register is faster to build, right? The smaller your team is, right? You can actually finish a first pass this week. But ironically enough, the size of the organization, the more unsanctioned or shadow AI that we see. Any other questions? Um, I just want to reiterate a couple things. Name an AI governance officer this week, right? And then start building a list of what tools you use. That inventory is the most critical artifact that you have, especially if you are regulated through compliance. Got one more question. It says, if we have NorthStar help us, what would it cost roughly? Um, Again, it depends, right? But depending on the organization, right, what we typically do, just like we do with cybersecurity foundations, is we want to take a look to see, what we're getting ourselves into, right? Um, we check for gaps in AI risk, AI readiness. The fun stuff comes around the AI opportunity, right? Because ultimately we want to be able to essentially pay for the services that we provide, right? But I would expect, right, that depending on the size of your organization, that you are going to pay anywhere from 2,500 on up, right, for the advisory piece, not including any type of infrastructure for the tech. But book a call. We could see where you line. The book a meeting with me on my e-card. It's the best. Anything else? Is the call free? Well, it's not long distance. I know, Amber, you're probably smirking right now, rolling your eyes, but remember when we used to have to pay for long distance calls? Those were the days. No, of course it's free, right? We'll sit down 30 minutes. I'll ask some questions. You'll ask some questions, right? We'll determine if it makes sense to continue to have conversations. But I'd love to be able to map out, right, your AI strategy in context with doing it safely. What we find is, if you don't have this stuff in place, right, your team is going, or they're going to go around the process, right? They're going to use a shortcut. And as long as the process to get approval takes longer and is more painful than just taking the shortcut, they're going to take the shortcut every time. So my job is to work with you to kind of understand where that risk lies and help you build out a system, right, that allows you to take advantage of all these cool things that we're doing with AI, but make sure we do it safely. Any other questions, comments, snide remarks? Nothing in the chat. I think I've got through the questions. Yeah. So this week, name an AI governance owner, right? And start your inventory. And if you register for this one, I think you're registered for all of them. But about a month from now, we'll be talking about assess, which is the next pillar. In the meantime, guys, take care of yourself, and I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.